Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. All I need, getting by. Verse. Like a sweet morning dew, I took one look at you, and it was plain to see you were my destiny. With arms open wide, I threw away my pride. I sacrificed for you, dedicate my life to you. I will go where you lead, always there in the time of need. And when I lose my will, your love is there to push me up the hill. 'Cause love is the right foundation, and with love we sure enough. You're all that I need to get by, to get by. Like an eagle protects his nest, I do my very best. Stand by you like a tree. Dare anybody try to move me? You're in I found when I was down. Who knows what's in store? We can open any door. Really, I will go every part and I'll follow. Take my hand, and I know that you will show. 'Cause we got the right foundation, and we love the termination. You're all that I want. You're all that the joy. You're all that I need. You're all that I need. You're all that I need to get by, to get by, to get by. You're all I need, yeah. You're all I need, yeah. Let's take it up now. You're all that I need to get my life, yeah. You're right by my side when things are dark. You're like a light that I can move to. I can get by. You're like a lighthouse, yeah. Just like a lighthouse, yeah. Somewhere, someone that I could swim to in the midst of the storm. Just like a lighthouse, yeah. Just like a lighthouse, yeah. Oh, you're all I need to get by. You're all I need, yeah, to get by. When things are lonely, yeah. When things are down, clap your hands. You're all I need to get by. Oh, yeah, you're all I need to get by. Just like a lighthouse, you are. Yeah, I need to get by. Yeah, you're all I need to get by. You're all I need. Let's take it out here to get by. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Well, Good evening and welcome to 2016's Shipping Report and Forecast from the Lighthouse, Mr. Tony Momrelle, who is currently #1 in the UK soul charts with his album Keep Pushing, which you'll find in your goodie bags tonight, later this evening, and trust me, these goodie bags are going to be good. They're going to be appearing tonight in this speech. He is simply one of the most outstanding talents on the UK shores, a fine example of what we must be supporting in this country. And Keep Pushing, and indeed the concept of you are all that you need to get by, are very pertinent thoughts tonight for our time together. The Lighthouse team and I are beyond thrilled that so many of you could make it. I know we're filling up upstairs as well, so I hope that you're not too hot and that you have some drinks. And as you know, we are deeply, deeply passionate about you, about talent, about searching for it, finding it, keeping it, desiring it. And increasingly over the last few years, we've become even more committed to studying the intricate psychological understanding of the human condition, and has only deepened our ability, I hope, to understand leaders such as you. Now in our 7th year, we are privileged enough to sit with about 5,000 individuals a year, and with the growth of our New World Talent Survey, over 600 of you at the C-suite level contributed to our survey this year from the advertising, media, marketing and technology sectors. And through that, we are able to really quantify the key trends identified at the Lighthouse across the last 12 months. I'm quite breathless from singing that song still, how exciting. These findings serve to understand your collective opinions, views and inner thoughts of our industry's leading lights this year. And whilst of course we'll retain our annual temperature check on the industry, we sought once again to gauge opinion on 3 distinct and emerging themes. This year being Estranged Encounters, Tempting Talent and Mind Mastery. And there is a printed report this year which you will also find in your goodie bags. Underpinning all 3 of these topics is a very clear understanding of the human capital that's involved in driving growth and success. As we look to our future, both professionally and personally, individually and collectively, it's wise to remember that what got us here may no longer get us there. And it's so critical in tonight's forecast to look at what we might consider embracing to bring greater peak performance, no matter our position. As some of you may remember, Tom George and Steve Hatch in particular, because they were our very first clients, we set out in 2019 to change the reputation of headhunters, and whilst we hope we're making some headway, we also felt the need again this year through our work together to pioneer once more. So a little later, I will be exclusively revealing the launch of a new business and a new business partner, which we hope will transport you a little bit further along your personal journey as a leader. Before we do that, we will of course take a little look back at the past year and a peek at the year ahead. So do get comfortable, hang on to the person next to you, and I trust that in the next 45 minutes we can line you up as many drinks as you can muster with a barman that's close to you, delicious canapes, ease down with some brilliant tunes from Lavashni and Darren, great friends of mine at the back who will be DJing for us tonight with some of hopefully your favourite people in the media industry. So over the last 12 months, for many of us, has been quite exhausting and a difficult year. On a public level, our sense of loss has been heightened. Bowie, Wogan, Rickman, Lemmy, Silla, Wes Craven, Jackie Collins, Omar Sharif, Leonard Nimoy, Natalie Cole, Keith Harris and Kirkbride, James Horner. There was a sudden sense of mortality upon all of us. 2015 seemed to start and end with the horrors in Paris, from Charlie Hebdo tragedy through to the horrific loss of 130 innocent lives in a series of coordinated terrorist attacks in November, felt by Havas quite specifically. In April, 30,000 people were affected by the devastating earthquake in Nepal, and we saw a humanitarian crisis as Europe struggled to cope with an influx of the Syrian refugees. And we lost some of the shining lights in our own industry far too early. Bobby Huey and Carl Gard are just 2 which truly shocked me very, very personally. If nothing else, all of this certainly gave us something of a perspective. However, 2015 also gave us a fair share of tabloid cheer. Who can forget David Cameron and the Pig, or the sacking of Clarkson and the departure of the Stig? I don't mean Nigel Clarkson. We welcomed the world a new baby royal and witnessed a heist that failed to foil. And football was revealed to be corrupt, whilst England's Rugby World Cup was quite abrupt. And same-sex marriage was allowed across the pond, and Sam Smith gave us a new theme tune for Bond, and Bruce Jenner transitioned into a star of Vanity Fair. But the debate over that dress was practically everywhere. And in 2015, we saw some amazing comebacks too. After their BBC sacking, the Top Gear team signed an eye-watering deal with Amazon. Adele was once again top of the charts, and Star Wars and Jurassic Park made astonishing franchises and record-breaking takings at the box office, and comebacks featured in our industry too. More of that later. We saw a frenetic period of pitching, globally or domestically, creative or media. It was often hard to keep up, literally. It seemed that pretty much every UK supermarket was up for pitch, and actually countless of the FMCG businesses globally had leadership teams flying around the world weekly. But how was it for you, our leaders? Well, in time-honoured tradition, we've asked some of you, so let's find out.
For 2015, from a business perspective, problematic, transformational, challenging.
Ambitious, acquisitive and accelerated.
Buoyant, exhilarating, exciting.
Three words: unemployed, employed, excited.
Fast, furious and fun.
I would say discovery, I would say fun, and I would say fulfillment.
Challenging, competitive, tiring, really tiring.
Transitional, exciting and exhausting.
Exhausting. Very, very fast, can't believe the year's over, but hugely rewarding.
Flux, tricksy and hopeful.
Positive, confusing, upbeat.
Well, it certainly was exhausting, wasn't it? But a thrilling year for many of us, and actually at the Lighthouse team too. We undertook over 100 board searches last year and consultancy projects, and we're incredibly proud of every single person and every single company that we get to work with to create these victorious partnerships, and many of you are here tonight, and it's genuinely very touching to see all of you. We continue to spend our time between London and New York offices, meeting new talent and strengthening our phenomenal transatlantic leadership stable. And we offered further board advisory level service for startups developing businesses across the side of the pond with positioning, talent and market approach. We welcomed 5 new members to our team: Catalin Tom from our relationship director side of the business, Ellie Brown, my wonderful EA, Brian Scott, who runs our marketing and is very much responsible for tonight, so please thank him if you see him, is at the back currently driving our charts, Claire McCaughey, who joined as our research analyst, and Michael Felix Ranford, that's double barrel by the way, who's our research coordinator. And if that wasn't enough, Layla and Rebecca, who many of you will know, have been with us for a very long time, made a very strategic play to up the male quota of the Lighthouse with the birth of their absolutely gorgeous boys, Ethan and Leonardo, and it's very lovely to have them here tonight with us too. We continue to co-produce and lead the Advisory Council for Advertising Meet Europe in partnership with Stillwell Partners, and Matt, Danny, Paul, Louise are all here tonight. Hi Matt. Ensuring the plans are set for a 4th spectacular year which starts on the 18th of April, more of that later on. And thanks to my 18-year friendship with a very old boss of mine, Tom Tomasi, MBE, I've recently joined the board of Childline and also become the Childline's adopted charity at the Lighthouse, and will be co-chairing the famous annual ball committee. I may very well be in touch with you. By all accounts, I have tables I have to sell. Aizon's been very clear with me of what my job will have to be. And talking of tables, we're launching a new series of the Captain's Table this year, which will see industry leaders invited to join the Lighthouse at all sorts of different occasions, including the Wackle dinners. I'm thrilled to finally join, thank you Lindsay, and to obviously our legendary lunches, etc. in Cannes. We continue to share our knowledge and wisdom towards education, equality and confidence to the younger generations through projects such as Ideas Britain and Speakers for Schools. At the same time, we'll be taking to the stage at events such as the Telegraph Festival of Education and Marie Claire at Work Live later this year. We also hosted last year our very first Tomorrow's Life Choices event aimed at children between 18 and 15 debating their next moves post-school. And thanks to a stellar bunch of industry mentors, we had a great response to our event in 2015, and we'll be hosting another 2 career evenings for your gorgeous children later this year, so watch this space. I've also now personally completed 18 months as a practicing therapist at the Grove to further my exploration into working with the human mind. And finally, the team that plays together stays together. We put ourselves through our paces, taking part in the world-famous Knaresborough Bed Race and Pageant, a 4K fun run through the hilly streets of Yorkshire, which finished through going through an icy river Nid. We were seeded 87th, out of 90, and we managed to climb the rankings a few places to then a few £1,000s for the charity in the process. A massive thank you to all of you who supported us. My head of operations, who's just to the left of the stage tonight, did shout over to me at the 800 metre mark, we were early in, that I hadn't effing signed up for this. It was the best laugh I had all year. So that's enough about us, but before we get into the shipping forecast for 2016, let's have a quick look at some of the things that you're looking forward to in the next 12 months.
I'd love for Sky in 2016 to continue its success, launch even more great products, and really now programmatic, and I'd love our reputation in partnerships to grow.
So what I would really like is if other media owners stopped desperately obsessing about getting hold of fucking TV revenue and just spend a bit more time proving their own effectiveness, and then I would be very happy.
For Crispin Porter Bukowski, I would like some new clients. I would like some new great people, and I would just like to have a ball.
I think keep the momentum going, so I think that would be the first. The second thing would be keep being brave on recruitment and looking beyond people like us to bring into our sector. And the third is probably to continue to enjoy what we do and be happy, because I think if you're happy, you will succeed.
I think no pitches. No pitches would be great, but that's unlikely to happen.
I think in the world of ad land and communications, people need a bit more courage in their convictions. Everything's become a little bit apologetic and too much time spent worrying. And I think to get any further, everyone needs that kind of boldness and assurance again. And to do that, it's all about demonstrating confidence, and perhaps there's been a lack of it, and I think that comes out both in the output and the manner in which we go about our work at the moment, which is a shame. And all of the above should, of course, lead to fantastic progression, because that's why we're all in it.
I think a peace, that's number one, that's necessary. Number two, speed. And number three, disruption.
I pray that my business will deliver, have passion, and have gratitude.
Strong, consistent partnerships, peer accountability and mindfulness, and automation.
And really importantly, I would love to see a bit more gender balance at the top of the industry, particularly in creative departments.
Better opportunities to do more creative things.
I think on a personal level, I'd like Watford to stay up. I'd like to score 100 in cricket, and I'd like my son to get to a really, not necessarily a good university, the university he wants to go to.
I would like, personally, get rid of my fat stomach.
I would like for our netball team not to be relegated into Division 5.
Electric bicycle.
I want my hall decorated.
Speedometer for my motorbike.
A vape that never runs out of battery.
Get my son through GCSEs. Happiness. Not too much killing on the streets. Peace and harmony.
Well, any amateur decorators in the room, I think Rachel may be very interested in hearing from you, and peace, absolutely, Mr. Wilkins, I see you up there. Our New World Talent Survey serves to identify and ratify key trends within the advertising, media and technology space, many of which we've been observing over the years, and this constant tracker of thoughts and opinions really does help us year on year to look at some of the surprising and illuminating changes. Encouragingly this year, a number of factors indicate that our top talent really is in quite a healthy position. First of all, as individuals, you are significantly more fulfilled today than you have been for at least the last 5 years, with 68% of you indicating you are professionally fulfilled. Considering the wider global context of unrest and uncertainty, there is a general sense that our leaders are feeling more content within stable roles with good pay and bright prospects. The factors that would influence, inspire or attract you to make that next career move also point to a more contented group of individuals, because the key hygiene factors such as company growth prospects, company leadership and financial package rank unsurprisingly highly, but 2016 saw significant increases in two other arguably more personal factors. Firstly, the need to broaden experience at 53% reflects our 2015 findings that leaders desire to be the horizontal hybrid roles, utilising many skills rather than just being a specialist. And secondly, a greater work-life balance, something we're seeing more demanded by candidates, and it's really refreshing to see hyper-growth businesses such as Snapchat and Spotify offering greater levels of flexibility to attract the top talent. Let's hope more of you can do the same. Those considering leaving the industry has stabilised, thank goodness, and when forced to think about where in the industry you'd most like to work next, the media owner side remains the clear favourite, despite an 8 percentage point drop year on year to 30%. While other destinations remain broadly in line with previous scores, the dramatic rise comes with the desire to move client side. Many clients here in the room tonight, an area we're being asked to look after more and more at the Lighthouse. In previous years, we've seen a sharp decline in the proportion of leaders who would choose to take their next role in an agency. But this year, however, this too has also stabilised. It looks like the age of the agency specialist, however, has really gone away. Hardly anybody at all on our survey wanted a specialist agency to become their next move. I'm guessing been incorporated into wider agency species, if you like. We also asked our leaders what kind of company, when knowing what you know now, they would choose to lead. And in 2015, 30% of them stated a startup, but that score has tumbled this year to 18%. We suspect the effect of the green-eyed monster, directed at those with early success and share options, is somehow hugely successful in industry brands, is sort of on the wane. Perhaps unsurprisingly, great remuneration, parity across the board, and a desire for increased work-life balance has seen many shun the potential startup millions and hours, to name the media owner as the hindsight choice winner of 2016. One to take note of is the fastest growing category of strategic consultant, doubling year on year to 8%. Working for yourself is a theme that will reappear later in this report. For the past 4 years, we've also been tracking how good our respondents believe their companies are at succession management. And generally, there is a sense of distinctly average in these findings, with almost half of our leaders answering this way again each year. However, whilst these results are relatively consistent, savvy companies wanting to attract the best talent need to be aware of the impact of agreed succession plans on the top tier. The proportion of them citing this as an important factor in their next career move has more than doubled year on year. So while our leaders appear to be feeling up and pretty stable, their view of the growth prospects of their own business is a little more subdued. 53% of respondents were confident in their company's prospects, a figure down from 56% in 2015 and 60% in 2014. While this is still much healthier than the 30-something% score seen at the turn of the decade, could this decline relate to a rise in global uncertainty, or perhaps indicative of something closer to home? So our first theme for this year is Estranged encounters. No matter which way you dissect this industry, there's never been a greater period of flux for this particular sector, whether that's technological, cultural, or economic. The seas have never been choppier or the waves of disruption quite so frequent. Last year saw unprecedented and hugely unsettling change in one area in particular, pitching. In the summer of 2015, Morgan Stanley published a report citing that in the US market alone was set to fight over $26 billion in advertising expenditure, a figure that was larger than the 3 previous years combined. Major global brands such as Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Mondelez, Procter & Gamble and Unilever, just to name a few, all reviewed their agencies. During this time, many partnerships were tested, and while new love blossomed for several, many woke up to find their once happy marriage had quickly become an estranged encounter, disrupted by global alignment, procurement teams, and clients wishing to better their outcomes. The grass for them looked greener. When looking at the most frustrating dynamics within our leaders' day-to-day business relationships, the procurement concerns somewhat evaporated. Instead, more potently, both human traits and our sheer ability to relate made the biggest difference in ensuring that our partnerships stayed on track. While poor communication, unrealistic demands, bad briefing, shifting goalposts are the most frustrating factors, trust and honesty and believing in true partnership, being open, being transparent, really made the best of the best working relationships. It seems the match of human capital employed on both sides of the value chain, be it client to agency or agency to media owner, has never been more important. A recurring statement in the 5,000 odd conversations we have every year is that the agency model is broken. And whilst this complaint is frequent, we rarely hear many solutions. When we ask the industry's top talent which one thing they would do to fix the agency model, however, some key themes emerged as areas for focus. Firstly, nearly 20% of leaders identified remuneration models as the first thing that should be looked at, with many calling for much more payment by results and others calling for less emphasis on timesheets and retainers as a method of reward. However, there was also a consistent call for fairness and transparency around kickbacks and trading desks. And what is evident is the need for greater neutral respect around what is fair and reasonable, and indeed motivating along with an equal willingness to be completely open about the commercial realities for all parties. Our leaders also believe that agencies must work harder to make clients value their contribution and the impact they can have on the bottom line. They're also adamant about having the correct talent in place at senior level is paramount to an agency thriving. And in a nod to the cyclical nature of our sector, the final trend is the re-emergence of some form of full-service model, a movement furthered with development of under-one-roof propositions such as the Anne Partnership, the Engine Group and Havas Village. So it seems like that all good relationships and encounters, the ability to connect, to relate, to talk with truth, to be willing to be brave around difficult topics where the solution isn't clear and maybe it needs to be built together, may form the answer to move from estranged back to the valued relationships we aspire to. At the Lighthouse, it seems for us deeply personal. In a world where we're reviewing our businesses every 3 to 4 years, where is the space to develop together? When we look at the relationship between John Lewis, Adam and Eve and MGOMD, which produces outstanding work for all parties, they have worked together for over 7 years. They have given each other time to allow the partnership to develop and thrive, and that partnership is one we all collectively admire. So on to tempting talent. Since our inception in 2009, we have understandably maintained a continued focus on talent and leadership. In 2015, we identified the growth of the need in horizontal hybrid leaders, a theme that resonated with so many of our clients and stood for the increasing requirement for top-tier talent to be able to demonstrate multi-discipline leadership. Last year, while nearly 3/4 of leaders surveyed felt motivated to lead across various business functions, we were very surprised that 1 in 5 of our respondents were doing nothing to prepare for these times. I think I remember Sinead telling you all off. But fast forward 12 months, and it's reassuring to see that 90% of our leaders feel their ability to lead across multidisciplines has significantly changed, with 40% citing a huge shift. And whilst multifaceted leaders are certainly the most in demand, certainly we see that at Lighthouse, we wanted to know which one skill our leaders felt differentiated them from the others. The stark response was that human traits trumped craft skill every time. Empathy, authenticity, emotional intelligence, communication, relationability really were coming out on top. We next looked at the local global dynamic with our industry. The Lighthouse witnessed a seismic shift in the number of global roles available to our top leaders. However, when probed, 31% said they would relish the opportunity to lead a function globally, but the remaining majority of 69% preferred to lead a business domestically. Perhaps the global dictate from other continents is robbing dynamic leaders of the autonomy they require. Does the vertical divisional reporting fracture the train set? And could the incessant travelling across time zones no longer be so attractive as our respondents continue to pursue a more balanced life? Often at the helm of the ship, our surveyed leaders are regularly hiring their own talent to report to. And what they're looking for in the next generation of talent is starkly clear. They're focused on the employee's mind. Strategic thinking, innovative thinking tops the factors. And most important to our respondents, while in-demand hybrid skills get scores more than 2.5 times higher than the need for a deep specialist skill. That pattern returns again. On the other side of the coin, we regularly hear of organisations harbouring stale talent. And when probed, our leaders cited factors such as over-reliance on historical knowledge and employee relationships with senior staff as important. However, ranking almost twice as high as any other factor is the stark truth that employees can prove too expensive or too much trouble to manage out. Alan wouldn't flinch. At the Lighthouse, we're not surprised by the result. Back in 2014, we forecasted the equity epidemic to much shock in the room. Driven by individuals staying in role to retain company stock options was fueling a less motivated and driven workforce. Over half of leaders in the companies that gave their employees stock or options believed their business was harbouring those holding out for their equity payday, but were no longer contributing to the hypergrowth. While this might not only be the reason preventing managing out of expensive or troublesome employees, we believe that more and more organisations offering staff such incentives, this trend will continue to follow a worrying and a problematic trajectory. Hiring well is of course an investment, but hiring badly costs a business financially, emotionally and reputationally. Tempting talent away features in any business strategy from start-up to corporate and remains a closely investigated cost line at every annual budget, and times are dramatically changing. With the rise of platforms such as LinkedIn, it has been only a matter of time before any forward-thinking business would and should consider building an in-house talent acquisition team. And we felt it timely to really investigate how effectively these are working, and indeed whether Lighthouse needed to fundamentally change our own business strategy. The results are clear, and they confirm our own hypotheses given our exposure to both client and candidates touched by this new trend, and it's all about the line between management and leadership. Those surveyed believe the internal teams aided their hiring due to the understanding they have of the company, increased cost effectiveness, greater alignment across the talent process, and helping to build an owned pool of talent. The benefit for organisations hiring multiple similar roles is also abundantly clear. However, the role of the leadership headhunter is similarly clear when our leaders were probed as to what doesn't work within their own talent acquisition teams. Whilst not knowing candidates or their reputation personally ranks highest, a one-size internal process, being less capable of dealing with senior leaders and lacking specific role requirement expertise were all seen as obstacles in the way of acquiring the best talent with internal teams in place. The real danger, however, lurked in the verbatim answers that you gave us around horror stories of well-meaning talent acquisition personnel, calling high-profile commercial leaders, CSOs, CEOs about roles that were being pitched at the wrong level, with a distinct lack of acknowledgement of their seniority, or indeed the relationship the individual already held within the business. It offends, but far worse, it diminishes the reputation of the business overall in the minds of the very talent you are trying to tempt. It strikes deep into the psyche and the ego of the individual, often in an irreparable way, and it is something to truly reconsider. We really urge you. We're often called in to be part of that repair plan, and it's a long and emotional road. And so, to the final theme of mind mastery. At the Lighthouse, we've always been great proponents of the importance of our leaders managing both their physical and their mental being. As an industry, we've become much more enlightened to the needs of both our cognitive and our emotional selves, and we're continually reassured by the growing recognition of how it's essential to take special care of the whole self. What is evident is the ever-growing demands and expectations on our top talent to deliver exponential revenue, be that to shareholders, VCs in the city, to be always on, to be continuously inventing and innovating. It tests even the sharpest and brightest of minds in our industry. Yet despite this pressure, we have a duty of care, both to ourselves and to those that we lead, to embody the qualities needed to be a figurehead within the business. Learning how to master the mind can release us from a prison of musts. We can often find ourselves living in this prison and in turn we need to encourage our ability to actually be more. When we looked at the stress factors in our survey this year, our leaders highlighted revenue, business transformation, new business pipeline, internal politics, and loss of talent as the primary factors for keeping them awake at night. In stark contrast to these broad business issues, personal considerations such as public profile, succession management, even fear of being fired barely ranked at all. When our top talent find themselves in challenging situations, their personal state can vary hugely. While some find greater drive, feel positively challenged or more focused, others will find themselves more anxious, unable to sleep, and drinking more. And while the negative factors may motivate them into action, it is vital these don't transform into debilitating and stressful scenarios. In fact, a 2015 compilation of studies by the Harvard Business School and Stanford University concluded that work stress increased the odds of a diagnosed illness by 35% and is as bad for us as secondhand smoke. As Bob Knight, the basketball coach, always said, mental toughness is to physical as 4 is to 1. So how do we combat this cognitive challenge? For years, we've seen organisations offering benefits and services to strengthen the employee's physical being. And from this year's finding, it's clear that those in leadership positions are far more interested in the company offering the ways to strengthen their own mindset over and above the physical. In our survey, most would opt for more coaching sessions as a primary way to help them, followed by greater flexible working and positive psychotherapy sessions. When we ask these individuals how they maintain peak performance in challenging situations, many of you turn to exercise, yoga, nutrition, and other physical techniques to get a release. In a similar vein, just as many use scenarios to really sort of refocus them, either through professional or their personal lives, giving them a chance to take stock and to reboot. A third emerging trend relates to our leaders' view that communicating and talking helps them to work through challenging times, whether this means spending time with those personally close to them or the professional in the form of either a therapist, a coach, or a mentor. At the Lighthouse, we believe the time is absolutely right to focus on balancing the cognitive with the emotional. And since our inception, we've believed in the core principles of psychology and human understanding as critical to unlocking the full leadership potential of those in our industry. But the million-dollar question has always been, are you ready?
Top performance means your whole self is working, right? You're thinking smartly, you're feeling like you're energized and you're leading well and you're inspired by what you do. I think it's pretty obvious to see that the physical attributes of that, when that's not happening, take place. Much harder to see that in people when sometimes mentally they're not feeling as strong or as happy as they want to be. And when you're in a leadership position, you are the lightning rods. I'm really pleased that we as an industry are looking at these issues. I'm really pleased that in Facebook and other organisations that physical part has become important, but so is that whole person part.
The big thing you need in our industry is bags of energy. Doing these roles is all about energy and resilience, and there are some brilliant organisations out there, the Energy Project and various people like that, who look at how they can help the whole organisation to sort of get the right energy.
Being CEO of a media agency is an extremely uncomfortable position to be in. I think it's really, really tough. And the industry is filled with these incredibly buoyant, positive, good-humoured, charismatic people. But that is really tested. It is absolutely relentless pressure. They're repitching their existing business constantly. They would expect to do that every 3 years, and the best that they can hope for is to keep their existing clients on a lower margin. That's not a lot of fun, is it?
I try, and I think I was successful in terms of the business, but personally, unfortunately, I went through the very tough 6 months period through when I got depression and burnout. Microsoft was always behind me and I fully recovered. But I think what I changed afterwards, after the experience in my life, I went back to old Greece. They call it kalokagatia, which means you need to balance 4 energies: physical energy, emotional, mental and spiritual. I was always good with the physical energy, but I was not necessarily flexing the mental muscles, emotional muscles and spiritual muscles. So you need to, the stress is not killing us. What is killing us? It's the way we are not able to handle the stress.
At Microsoft, it was fantastic. We had coaches. We certainly had support for emotional issues. There was a real understanding that humans are made up of emotions as well as cognitions, and that we need to manage both. And most of the leadership programs really dealt with that very key learning, that core concept, that the only thing that's stopping us from moving forward to doing greater things is ourself.
I think throwing someone a gym membership is a lovely yet incredibly easy, borderline lazy thing to offer up for everyone as a means of we care about you. Perhaps the reality, or perhaps there's more need to go a little bit deeper than that. I think anything that looks at all into the mind or mental health or well-being, broadly in the UK full stop, is often either got a stigma attached to it, or there's a huge amount of unknowns and uncertainties, and subsequently for a big company to start delving into that is perhaps a huge amount of work, areas that they're not sure about themselves, and subsequently it gets ignored. But that's a shame, because we're ignoring some really big issues.
I think therapy is a tricky word for Brits. I think we see the Americanisation of therapy, and therapy brings with it, I think, a lot of negative connotations. So I think that's the first issue. I think it's the word in itself. I think there is the fact that, you know, Brits, we don't like that sort of having to say we need help in any form. And so it's still taboo, it's still a taboo thing.
I think psychotherapy, even as a word, psycho, it's not good. It's a bad film, isn't it? Weird man lived with his mum, used to go stab women in the showers. I mean, it's not good.
Maybe there's something in the language of the brand of psychotherapy, and it sounds corrective and fixing a broken thing, rather than actually what often this kind of work is. We're just enhancing and have a deeper understanding of what you love, what you're passionate about, and what you do best. Yeah, I mean, in the UK, oh Christ, it was only when Princess Di died that we all started hugging each other for the first time, wasn't it? We've done a film this year for a big brand that's about how dads and their sons still don't hug enough. It's still a ridiculous UK-centric, stoic, stiff upper lip, British blighty attitude that exists.
We're very British, aren't we? We're very uptight. We don't like the idea, really, of sharing our emotions and getting into that sort of difficult, emotional, complicated stuff.
I just don't think we're as sure-footed there as we are with, say, if you break an arm, or you break a leg, or you're hurt in an accident. Whereas in the US, I think they're much better at dealing with those issues and much more upfront about it.
When I was working in New York years ago, 6 years ago, somebody sent an email around the Naked office and it said, "Can anybody recommend a shrink? I need to see one this afternoon." And I thought, oh my good God, what is this person doing? And then about 20 people replied with, "Oh, the person I see, really good." And I thought, okay, it's not taboo here.
Personally, I don't have any taboos around this. I'd spent 2 years when I thought I was going to leave the industry to go and be a psychotherapist in therapeutic training. And it turned out to be the single best bit of management training I'd ever done. The idea of you really have to know yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses if you're going to help others be as good as you really want them to be. If you can find the right therapy, in inverted commas, then what a wonderful, brilliant, supportive thing that can be.
You know, I went to go and see a therapist when I was at Hal Henry. I don't think I went mental, but I was certainly needed to have a chat to somebody. I lived on my own, hardly ever saw my parents because I spent the whole time working. And I went to go and see somebody who was what they would call a healer.
You know, the time I have looked for help for myself personally is when I was quite seriously ill, off work a very long time, massive impact on everybody else. I was so busy caring for everybody else, I didn't think about myself, and I was like, I'm fine, I'm looking after everybody else and it's all fine. And suddenly realised actually there is a big impact and you can suddenly feel it coming in, you can hold it in, and actually I'm a big believer in get it out. Because if you hold it in, it'll make you ill again. So I did have some, you know, support and counselling around that, and basically just cried for a few sessions and got it out. And I think that's a really good cathartic thing to do.
I found great comfort spending time with a therapist, and started to work more on me, more on my views on myself, how I see myself, and how I could better myself. So what's happened is he's now become a therapist stroke coach. We talk a lot about work, we talk a lot about my relationships, we talk a lot about how I'm handling my life. My kids happily would say I'm a much better dad, and the people who I lead at work would say I'm a much better leader.
I would love it to be much more sort of talked about how people use kind of breathing exercises, meditation, sort of life coaches, mentors, because I think then you kind of get that talking about you as a person becomes, and how you've developed sort of your career performance becomes a bit more the norm.
If companies had an on-staff psychiatrist, I think that would be actually a really good thing. You know, I mean, we've got 300 people, why not? We've got an on-staff masseur, we've got an on-staff chef, we've got, you know, management coaches, so why not have a shrink, really? It's probably quite a good idea.
Have I ever had therapy? Sure I have. Have I ever had counselling? Of course. Have I ever had coaching? As much as possible. Would I do it again? Yes. Would I recommend it to others? Hell yeah.
It helped me to understand much more who I am as a person, and also like me and accept who I am, because I did a lot of good things, I did a lot of mistakes, but it's still me. And I think only authentic leaders will write the history of the 21st century.
So, in in 2016, the Lighthouse will extend our duty of care with the introduction of positive psychoeducation and therapeutic programs to aid professional development, something 80% of leaders we surveyed said they were open to. Given 25% of you already have some form of therapy to develop yourselves and another quarter actively considered it in our survey, it seems we may be ready to welcome the concept of developing ourselves from the inside, building a greater connection to our instincts and to our internal processes. And this fundamental change brings extraordinary behavioural shifts and with it an even greater way to navigate the world as a leader. I have personally partnered with a magnificent man, some of you in this room already know, through your own personal work with him as your coach or your therapist, and it gives me great pleasure to tell you that as of April this year, Ben McKee will be the co-founder and director with me in this new business. If you're looking for an ology, he's got quite a few, along with specialist training in trauma, addiction, bereavement, and of course executive leadership coaching too. I've introduced him to over 50 private clients in the last 4 years, and every single one has gone on to be more with his guidance and his wisdom. He's incredibly special, and I'm very blessed to launch this dynamic business with him. So individually or as a board, we will be offering 4-day residential programs both in France and Marrakesh, or longer-term on-site programs to work with the whole self. Personal and professional ambitions, hopes, dreams, fears, challenges, all of it can be put on the table, and we'll look after everything from blood work and nutrition to bodywork, massage, meditation, psychotherapy, and of course, executive coaching. And its name? Well, seeing as we're all so British and uptight and fearful and squeamish about the P word, we thought long and hard about how to make our approach to you as CEOs and leaders, given we'll be asking to work with you and your board at the most senior level. We found well-being and mindfulness and holistic this and that all rather impotent. And so, my gorgeous clients and friends, we decided to do what we authentically needed to do and face you down. We very much hope you will meet with Ben and I from April and talk to us about working with our brand new executive leadership business. It's going to be called Psyched. And for those of you still unsure about whether the more therapeutic frame is for you, I have also given all of you the best introduction to therapy. It's a beautiful book by the famous Irvin Yalom. And guess what? It's in that goodie bag for you as well. So the final section, I know you're getting hot. This is the favourite bit that you all love. We'll quickly run through as we know how much you like a poll, and there's no holds barred in this as always. So let's go. 2016 is no different. Sorry, my microphone's slightly banging. So first up, which business did you really feel performed in 2015? And what is fantastic to see is some of our brilliant agencies winning back some very rightful places in the top 5. Whilst Facebook and ITV retained last year's leadership positions, Jenny and the fabulous team at 7 Stars came in 3rd place, and James and Adam and Eve jumped in to the top 5. Perhaps most remarkable is the return to good fortune by Jonathan and the team that we helped him build at Channel 4. From the bottom in 2014 to top 4 in 2015, it just goes to show what a healthy dose of resilience, belief, and a willingness to reignite the business can really do for you. However, for all the positive gain, there is an equal amount of pain. And as you'll know, we always ask which business you felt could have performed better in 2015. This is where the eggs come. You replied Twitter, Yahoo, News UK, Google and Bauer. But if there's one thing these year-on-year results have taught us, they're merely a snapshot in time. With the very public return of Jack Dorsey to lead Twitter, Rebecca Brooks once again taking the helm at News UK, not to mention our very own Nigel Clarkson taking up the UK MD job at Yahoo just this week. Hello, Nigel. I'm sure next year we'll be looking at some very different results indeed. That's all right, Nigel. Leaders in our industry have to deal with some of the most disruptive and choppy seas in any sector. And when we asked which individual leader you felt performed particularly well in 2015, there was no surprise to see the fabulous Karen Blackett at Mediacom, Steve Hatch at Facebook, and of course WPP's Sir Martin Sorrell, not forgetting the raft of media owner and agency talent we can see just snapping at their heels. And Kelly, I know you're here tonight as well. When asked which one company you'd be inspired to work for in 2016, the startling response was all media owners. Google in first place, obviously closely followed by Facebook and ITV. The rapid ascension of Snapchat is clear, not even on our radar on these shores quite yet. They're obviously the hot ones to watch in 2016, although this did prompt Bruce Daisley and I to have our first ever Twitter spat, and I love you, Brucey. With recurring themes becoming more apparent, we then asked you who you'd most like to work for, and the overwhelming response was yourselves. We've seen this trend grow for a few years now. I am a perfect advocate for that, but was even more apparent in this year's results, with even more of you looking to go to the consultant or going your own route. It really is a career move that you're very interested in. The next one is always a bit of a contentious topic, and as I always say every year, but I always get an angry email, the real findings will go with me to my grave, but we always ask, who do you think was the most disastrous hire of the year? And it seems that in the race to get that coveted CEO position, some of those nominated have been labelled with chasing titles. Perhaps deep down, management versus leadership are really different skills, and it may be worth really thinking about what that means. However, this man knows a thing or two about this and featured very, very heavily in our poll. And so, to this year's Fantasy for Hire, while I would like to personally thank all 11 of you that voted for me, I know this is just a sympathy vote for the fact that I'm still single, but it was another poll-topping performance this year for Sir Martin Sorrell. Now at 71, he continues to be the talent you most want on your team. Good luck getting that salary signed off by your Remco. However, it was the very likeable Facebook filling between him and Anton Deck that really stood out, with a combination of Zuckerberg, Mendelsohn and Hatch reinforcing the stellar performance we've seen from the social network this year. A topic that's been top of mind at the Lighthouse over the past few months has been that of the comeback. And I know this man is in the audience tonight because I saw his afro arrive. We've played a very, very small part in heralding David Haye's return to the boxing ring by providing an incubation space for the birth of Salter brothers, absolutely, who have been hugely instrumental in David's comeback. So we've asked our leaders who they felt made the biggest comeback in our industry in 2015. Topping the bill was AOL. Post their acquisition by Verizon, they've monumentally taken control of Microsoft's multi-platform display advertising business, a reinvention that has put AOL back at the top of the ad tech business. They were followed by Channel 4 for all the reasons we've already discussed, and of course News UK as well. But what was wonderful to see was Grey London, who shook off any iota of monochrome reputation by being the only agency in the world to win 2 Grand Prix at last year's Cannes Lion. This year, we also asked you to vote for the ultimate leader of the year, and rather unsurprisingly, but well done to him, Mr. Martin Sorrell topped the list, just pipping the wonderful Jenny Bigham to 7 stars to peak position. As you can see from this slide, with the exception of the wonderful Steve Hatch, every one of our top nominees work in the agency world. So whilst perhaps agency life may not top your next career choice, and reiterating Lindsay Clay's words from the earlier film, we clearly recognise the brilliant talent that we have leading our agencies, be it in the biggest networks or the brightest independents, the media specialists or the creative world. And without beating the drum too much, it's equally reassuring to see the right equal gender mix in the top of our performers. So before we leave the stage tonight, a couple of quick and important things to mention. Advertising Week Europe, as we rev up for year 4, we're expecting another bumper year. If you haven't got your tickets for yourselves or your teams, please go to the website and do it immediately. It's CPD qualifying, it's the best thought leadership on these shores, and it's a true celebration of why all of us wanted to be in this beautiful industry in the first place all those years ago. 18th to 22nd of April, if you're going to be on stage or in the audience, preferably both, make sure that you are there. Lighthouse will be theming the comeback, so watch the press for more details in the coming weeks. And finally, something very special. As you know, we love working with entrepreneurial, exciting, hyper-growth companies. And so tonight, I would like to introduce you to Cargo, who with their premium mobile marketplace certainly fit that bill. They will shortly be launching on our shores, and you can expect some big news from them in the next few weeks as they announce the appointment of their general manager for EMEA, which we led the search for. But for tonight, we're delighted to welcome the company's founder, Harry Cargman, Doug and his executive team to our event, who have generously offered to make sure we are suitably fed and watered for the rest of the evening. It's certainly the way to win the UK marketplace over Harry, so cheers. On behalf of my amazing, talented Lighthouse team, thank you for making tonight such a great turnout. You always do. And encourage us to sort of ask you to remember these things from tonight. If you don't want to become an estranged encounter, encourage your teams and your clients to keep truth on the table. If you want to tempt senior leadership talent to your shores, don't send a friendly dinghy and a waterproof torch, send the speedboat. And if you know you're asking extraordinary things of yourself and your team, remember you have a duty of care to yourself and your team, and remember the whole self needs looking after. As Bob Nelson said, you get the best from people, not by lighting a fire beneath them, but by building a fire within them. wishing you a brilliant 2016. Let's all get a little bit psyched together.